Hello, and welcome to a new episode from the Markets Middleman. Today is Sunday, December 7, and what I'm about to share with you is my Forex forecast for the upcoming week, which is going to be very important since we have the Fed interest rate on Wednesday. So the outlook is going to go through the DXY, EU, the Euro, and GU, the pound. So let's get started. As usual, I like to mark out the DXY level since it's highly correlated with EU and GU specifically. And after I outline the major changes or the weekly chart from the DXY, then I go and translate what the DXY is telling me into the EU and GU. So, first things first, this week had confirmed a very strong confirmation from the DXY since we see after sweeping this buy side created a high and then again traded lower into this inefficiency weekly fair value gap and then swept this buy side once again. So right now what the weekly told us is that after sweeping the buy side, the week closed bearish for the first time. What I mean by bearish is below the last week's low. We haven't seen this in a while. Yes, we saw it over here, but it wasn't fully confirmed and we had this bullish fair value gap that closed inside of it. So it wasn't really bearish until this last week closing below the low of the previous week, inverting this weekly fair value gap that worked for 3-4 weeks before and closing below this weekly breaker block over here, which is the last up closing candle as an order block as well. So the weekly is hinting strongly bearish. Okay, it's as if we can anticipate the next weekly move, which I anticipate to be also bearish. To where? Probably to October's low, all of the lows that was created through October, and some gap up and over here, which we will see on the daily and the hourly time frame. So from the weekly, we are strongly bearish on the DXY. Now, when I scale into the daily time frame, I see that also ever since we swept the SPY side, price started creating lower lows and lower highs. And this was a critical sell side for price, which we see that price is not quite respecting it that much and created a daily fair value gap. Plus, the open candle of Wednesday also created a lower gap over here. So this hints in a very strong bearish momentum. Now, this sell side is also very important because this sell side was the last low that price created before displacing up and creating new highs. So I'm anticipating that during next week this sell side will be taken or might be taken. Okay, anything can happen and the DXY can trend higher, but the probability are leaning towards a bearish DXY more than actually bullish. So the areas of interest on the daily time frame is the weekly breaker block and Wednesday's gap over here. That's really all I can say from the daily time frame. So we are strongly bearish on the weekly, we are strongly bearish on the daily, as in for the area of interest first on the higher time frame is the weekly breaker block as well as this daily gap open on last Wednesday. Now, if I want to sharpen a little bit or be more precise in the area of interest that I'm waiting for, I scale down into the 8-hour time frame and I see a beautiful fair value gap over here within Wednesday's gap, okay, which is aligning perfectly with the weekly breaker block. So this is really a very important inefficiency for price to sweep or balance and then continue its way to the downside, sweeping all of those relative equal lows in addition to this sell side liquidity over here. So one last thing on the 6-hour, it's the same fair value gap from the 8-hour and the 6-hour. And one last thing I add is the feeble level. So if I take the feeble level from the last swing low over here, swing high, sorry, to the swing low, I get the 61 feeble level aligns perfectly within this level. So this is really a very critical area for the DXY. So in case we haven't swept the sell side, the minor sell side, which is Thursday's low, and we haven't taken this sell side yet, as long as price is still trading above those two sell sides and we see it tap into this inefficiency over here, then there's a high probability that price is gonna continue its way down to sweep this sell side and this sell side respectively. So I'm really gonna be keeping a sharp eye on this level over here. So now after I'm aware from the DXY weekly time frame is bearish, daily is bearish, also the 6 hour, the 8 hour, all of the time frames are really screaming bearish. Then right now I can go into the EU and GU and try to inverse this bias, which means that I can be bullish on the EU and GU, and then we can break down the areas of interest. So let's go for it. So same thing I do with the DXY where I scale down or break down from the weekly into the hourly time frame. I do the same with the EU. So if I just look on the EU chart, I see a huge SMT divergence between EU and DXY, plus also another SMT that happened within those two lows over here. So usually when we see such a huge SMT divergence between EU and the DXY, means that the trend is about to shift. Now, further information that told me that yes, I can be fully bullish on the EU is this weekly close over here. So we saw that price tried to make a displacement on the weekly time frame, then it corrected, failed to take this low, which hints for strength, and then also this week, this last week closed fully bullish above the high of the previous week, as well as the high of this weekly breaker block. So this low is protected and this high have a high edge to be taken. So during next week, I want to see any kind of rotation or retrace lower into this area over here for a potential continuation into the weekly high and the next buy side liquidities that are resting just above this high over here. So also, when I want to align this with the daily time frame, I see that the day finally showed us signs of being bullish by breaking this structure over here. Maybe it's not the best break of structure, we're not seeing something like this on GU, but it's still enough for price to give us some information that the price is actually bullish. So, and as well, another thing the daily time frame can tell me is creating this first bullish fair value gap, which Friday refused to close inside it. Okay, so this fair value gap can still be induced, whereby we see Monday, Tuesday sweep below or rebalance this fair value gap and then close above it. I don't want to see the day close inside or slash below this fair value gap. Otherwise, the bias on the daily would shift to be bearish. So the existence of this bullish fair value gap on the daily shows me that yes, this could potentially be a displacement, noticing that it broke a previous breaker on the daily as well as closing the week strongly above last week's high, which was the high of Thursday during last week. So the daily is also showing me that I can be super bullish on the EU. Now, for the areas of interest, I scaled down into the 12-hour time frame, and I see that price respected this 12-hour order block during last week and also creating another couple of 12-hour order blocks with a small inefficiency over here. Add to them the 705 Fibo level, which the market institutions use so much because it's the last point of defense for buyers. So think with me, over this area, how many confluences we have? We have the weekly breaker block, we have the 12-hour order block, we have the 705 Fibo level, and we have an inducement of a daily fair value gap. So same thing we discussed on the DXY, the 6-hour, 8-hour fair value gap, which we are waiting for to balance. This is gonna be the same thing I'm waiting on the EU. So what I want to see beginning of the next week, and this might happen on Monday or Tuesday, since usually Monday and Tuesday mark the low slash the high of the week. So I'm expecting to see this soon during next week. So what I want to see is some accumulation and then manipulation into this area over here, and I'll be observing price on the lower time frame to see any kind of potential reversal from there. And one last look on the 4-hour time frame, as we can see the change in market structure from making lower lows and lower highs for the previous months until we failed to make a lower high, and instead we broke the structure, and we keep on breaking the structure, marking higher highs, higher lows within this trend. So this is really nice. And notice the last 4 hour order block, this is still intact. So aligning this 4 hour order block with all of the information from the higher time frame also gives me strong conviction that this could potentially turn out to be another manipulation and then a potential continuation to the upside. Now the targets here are very obvious. The first target could be this buy side liquidity over here, as well as the Fib 27 extension from this wave, and as well as the buy side from October 17. Now after that we really don't know what happened, and all we need to do is just to wait to see how price could print this bullish narrative going into the next week. So this is the area that I'm watching for the EU. You can mark it on charts and you can observe how price will actually react into this level. Now moving forward, and last but not least, this is the GU or the pound. We see that last week we had the bullish bias on the pound simply because of the weekly close. So it was very obvious how the week closed strongly above the last weekly high, which we haven't seen since a long time after all of this consolidation. And this week came also to confirm the bullish bias on the weekly time frame by also closing above the high of the previous week. So the weekly low is protected and the weekly high has a high edge to be taken after retracing back into any point of interest. And notice something also on the weekly time frame. After this huge bearish fair value gap that was created on the week, this week came to confirm that yes, we are no longer bearish 100% on the pound. Instead, we are fully bullish. And we have a lot of buy side liquidities resting just above this breaker over here. So there's really huge potential to the upside for the pound during the upcoming weeks. And also, if I scale down into the daily time frame, you see last Wednesday it was like a crazy bullish candle. Really, the pound traded over like 1.2% in just one day, which doesn't usually happen a lot in the Forex market. So that was really huge, confirming, okay, if you were a little bit confused that this is actually a displacement and price is confirming bullish, this extra displacement here came just to negate all of the bearish bias and just telling us that price is strongly bullish. Of course, again, anything can happen in these markets and price can at any time trade lower, and this could be like a relief retracement into a further downside, but the probability at least to sweep this buy side again and this buy side is much more higher. So on the daily I don't have like that much of a critical or precise um, area of interest. Yes, you can see there's a huge daily fair value gap, but we cannot just buy from here knowing that we have a lot of inefficiencies laying down over here on the hourly time frame. So what I can just put as an average area of interest is this weekly inverse fair value gap, and right now I can scale down into the lower time frame starting with the 12-hour fair value gap over here, which aligns with the 4-hour and 2-hour fair value gap. So this is like the A++ inefficiency, of course, because it's also aligning with this breaker block. So we have like a mitigation over here, a fair value gap plus liquidity that aligns together. I just had this small 8-hour fair value gap, but also I wouldn't be aggressively buying from here. Instead, I would wait for confirmation. But the area that I will be aggressively buying the GU from is this 4-hour fair value gap over here. So if I see the GU trading around this 4-hour fair value gap, I'm really gonna be aggressive on my entries on the lowest lower time frames. I just want to see anything, any information that price is actually reversing. Maybe this could be like an inverse fair value gap on the 5 minutes or 15 minutes, or I can see like a small displacement on the 5 minutes time frame just to start accumulating my long orders going into the next buy side liquidity over here and this buy side which is well presented. So even though price tested those two buy side liquidities over here, it's just as long as price is correcting lower, making an accumulation, even though we see the manipulation, the fact that I saw some accumulation after testing a critical buy side, this shows me that the price is actually bullish. What I don't want to see, if I'm still bullish, is price sweeping a buy side and marking a reversal like this, just like closing below a previous low, or displacing sharply lower, or just inversing a critical fair value gap directly. But as long as the structure is healthy, prices accumulating, any kind of manipulation will just confirm that price could sweep this buy side, balance this fair value gap and just keep on moving up. So this is the area that I'm gonna be observing for the GU. So again, back to the DXY, everything will actually start once the XY decide what it's gonna do. Notice that we have the interest rate on Wednesday, but I mean, usually those news are priced in before they happen. Okay, so we already saw that the US dollar is trending lower before actually the news, before a couple of weeks of the news. And yes, anything can happen, and price could actually deliver, and then we can see some extra manipulation or whatever. But if I prefer to be in before the news, so the news comes and just deliver price. So also, if this idea would work out and we see price not respecting this sell side, the next target would be to close this gap over here since the beginning of October. So this is really very important for price to actually fill in. Notice those two relative equal lows just resting above this gap. So this is really a big pocket for the DXY to visit, knowing that it failed to make a new high and instead it just swept this buy side. So again, anything can happen, and just be careful of your risk entering those markets. Mark out those levels if you think that they are valuable to you, and just observe how price would actually behave around those levels. In case you needed any help, we're always updating and making some daily updates on our Telegram channel with the community. So in case you would like to ask anything or have some extra insight, you're more than welcome. So hope you had a beautiful weekend. Please trade safe, take good care of yourself and your friends and your family, and I see you in the next update. Let's go.